It has been 1 year since the protest against police brutality, impunity, and bad governance, organized by Nigerian youth to protest against these social and unacceptable vices. I am Augusta Neka, and this broadcast is brought to you courtesy of News.Band Television. Now, today we are going to be talking about the upcoming anniversary protest. But before we talk about that, we will talk about the history of the hashtag #EndSARS protest. We will also talk about the issues raised by the protest, what has changed in 1 year. We'll also talk about the government reaction. We'll also talk about the international community reaction. And then we will talk about the upcoming anniversary of the victims of the Lekki Toll Gate massacre. Now, just before we jump in, like I said, let's talk about the history of the hashtag. The hashtag #EndSARS started back in 2017, but it did not gain as much momentum as you would expect. And then it later died down until 2020, when we saw a video that went viral when alleged members of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS, killed a young man and took off with his car. Now, that video alone sparked a lot of reaction from Nigerian youths, and they were tired of impunity or alleged impunity and alleged police brutality. And they took their fight and their voice away from just talking on Twitter to the streets. This SARS protest became a nationwide issue when we saw the protest spanning over a week, an issue that the government had to react to. Now, of course, the issues raised by these #EndSARS protests included, but not limited to, police brutality, impunity, bad governance, and so on, disbandment of SARS, and so on and so forth. You would recall that when this protest started, the police force came out, the federal government came out together with the IGP of police, came out to say that the SARS has been disbanded. That happened on the 11th of October, 2020. But of course, Nigerian youth were tired of empty promises, and the 5th or the 6th time that SARS was disbanded. The first time SARS was disbanded was in this first happened in 2006. First happened in 2006 when the federal government came out to promise police reform, the reform of Nigerian police force, and in a bid to listen to the cries of the Nigerian public. Now, in 2006, Nigerian masses were already tired of impunity, police brutality, you name them. And Nigerian government came out and said, okay, we have disbanded the Special Anti-Robbery Squad. But of course, nothing changed. The same thing happened also in 2008 when the Presidential Committee proposed reformations on Nigerian police. Same happened in 2015 when Nigerian authorities also again promised to reform SARS. Also in 2018, when the Vice President Yemi Osibanjo was the acting president, he came out to also inaugurate a committee, a presidential commission of inquiry to investigate the unit activities. In 2019, the then newly Inspector General of Police also came out to completely disband the Federal Special Anti-Robbery Squad, that's the FSAS. But of course, all these whole disbandment, reforms, inquiry, committee, commission, you mentioned them, did not change. So when on October 11th, 2020, the federal government came out and said that they have disbanded SARS and there will be a total end to police brutality, the Nigerian youth were not buying it. Instead, it sparked a lot of reaction. And people said, okay, if you have ended SARS, then we are going to start agitating for an end to other vices, which included bad governance, impunity, and harassment, and a total ignoring of human rights. Now, these are the issues that was raised during the #EndSARS protest. Now let us try to look at what has changed from that time to the present. Have police brutality stopped? Have we seen an end to impunity? Have we seen an end to bad governance? Have we seen an end to ignoring of human rights of the Nigerian youths? These are questions that you would have to answer yourself. And I can only give my own analysis, but you would have to answer that. You can also come out and tell us if indeed you have not been brutalized, if indeed you have not been harassed as a young person, if indeed the government is now good and is now fulfilling their promises. But moving on, we will try to look at the government reaction to that protest. Remember that when this protest started, following the October 4th shooting or alleged shooting of young men in Delta State, the federal government came out to say that that is not, the IGP of police came out to say that that is not members of the SARS. And he completely denied the police involvement, which of course sparked the reaction and led to the NSAS protest. But we now saw tech people, members of the technology community, saying that they have been harassed simply for carrying long hair, for using an iPhone, for using a laptop, and simply for just being a Nigerian youth. Government came out to promise that their rights as human beings would be respected. But the question remains, is that true? Have they fulfilled their promise? Looking at government reaction, like I said, just recently, a few days ago, the minority leader of the House of Representatives came out to propose a motion to inquire, or rather to set up a committee or to mandate rather the House of Representatives Committee on Police Affairs to investigate the matter raised by the NSAS. But this motion was voted against 3 good times, where the nays had it, 3 good times, saying that the NSAS protest was not actually peaceful. Rather, it caused blockage of major roads. It caused a destruction of lives and property, and therefore it cannot be considered peaceful. The Deputy House of Representatives, the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, who spoke against this motion, said that he was a victim of that protest, and therefore the police should be allowed to do their jobs, which includes stopping protests. Now, speaking against this, Femi Falana, one of the prominent senior advocates of Nigeria, has come out to say that the police is not justified in stopping the NSAS protest. If anything, they should be mandated to protect the lives and property of the protesters, as protesting was actually a human right. He was seen quoting the Article 9 and 10 of the African Charter, of which Nigeria is a signatory, saying that Nigerian youths have the right to protest, and the police should actually protect them. He also condemned the thought of the necessity of a police permit to carry out protests. He quoted the judgment in the case of the All Nigerian People's Party versus the Inspector General of Police in 2006, where the High Court ruled against the Inspector General of Police, stating that a police permit is actually not necessary to carry out a permit. So for those people doubting, or for those people thinking that a police permit is needed to carry out a protest, it's actually not needed according to that judgment. So Femi Falana has come out to talk to the federal government and said that you should mandate the police to protect the lives and property of protesters rather than try to shut them down. But this is not the same actually with other arms of government. The Nigerian police are still insisting that the remembrance protest that is being organized by Nigerian youths, once again, in remembrance of the Lekki Tollgate massacre, should not hold. They have said that that protest is unconstitutional, and actually it's going to lead to a breakdown of law and order. Whether that is going to happen or not is what I cannot say for now. But looking at the international community reaction towards that protest, for the first time, like I said, Nigerian youth came out en masse to protest against issues, and the international community paid heed. We saw the international community pressurizing the Nigerian government to take note of the issues raised and for the government to address it properly. But of course, this did not happen, as we saw that the Nigerian government just swept those issues under the rug after making a whole lot of promises. We have not seen them come to fruition. We have not seen anything happening, but we are still praying and hoping that the international community once again will keep mounting pressure on Nigerian government to do something, to listen to the cries of Nigerian youths, and to once again understand our plight, understand our pain, understand our cries, and know that we do not want to be killed in our own country. We want our lives, our properties to be protected. Now, just before I go to the main issue of today, which is the upcoming anniversary march, and where we are also going to look at what has changed in 1 year, where we're also going to look at what we could have done differently to help public opinion and public view on this issue. And it showed the shooting at the Lekki toll gate. Remember that event happened on the 20th of October 2020, and now an anniversary march is being organized to remember that event. So we are going to look at now what has changed from that time to this time. Now, after that event, after the whole NSAS protest, we saw an increase in the participation of Nigerian youths in affairs concerning them. Before now, Nigerian youth had developed this nonchalant attitude towards policies, politics, and governance in general. But after they understood the power of numbers and what their right is and what can happen when they organize and come together, they realize that the power actually lies with the electorate rather than the leadership, as was previously thought. Now, this has motivated a lot of people to go out to get their voters card, to start participating in politics, to start participating in public forums, to start participating in lawmaking process. We have seen that leaders are now being held accountable to a greater extent than what was obtainable before. We have also seen that following that incident, the Nigerian government have strategically adopted some policies to allegedly shut down the power of Nigerian youths, which included the Twitter ban, the whole media bill, the social media bill, and the rest of them. But these are just allegations against the Nigerian government. Whether or not they are true, we are yet to confirm. Now, talking about the upcoming anniversary march, we have seen famous musicians, famous people of influence coming out to advocate that a new protest be carried out to celebrate the people that lost their lives in that tragic event at the Lekki toll gate. Whether or not this protest is going to actually hold is what we are not sure of. But security operatives have advised that you remain indoors to prevent this situation from escalating. Now, what would we have Nigerian youth have done differently from what happened then, from during the protest, to have prevented that issue? First of all, the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives came out when he was speaking against the motion to investigate the issues raised by the NSAS. He alleged, or rather, he stated that that protest was not peaceful. He made this known due to the burning of tires, due to the destruction of properties, due to the looting of shops carried out by Nigerian youths. Of course, Nigerian youths have rejected that claim and said that these were carried out by hoodlums that were set to disrupt that protest. Whether or not this actually is true is what we are yet to confirm. These hoodlums are allegedly people sponsored by the federal government to distract Nigerian youths from that protest. These hoodlums were seen carrying out a protest in places like Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt, and other major cities, stating or rather carrying placards stating that they were members of the anti-NSAS protest. They wanted nothing to do with the NSAS protest, and they were fighting against the people protesting against the NSAS protest. This led to various clashes. In some cases, some arrests were made, and in some cases, bodily harm were recorded. But of course, what could have Nigerian youths done differently? Should they have sat down and let these people beat them and prevented them from carrying out their rights to protest? Should they also have sat down and ignored the issues of police brutality, impunity, and bad governance, which were the issues raised by the NSAS government? What could they have done differently? This should be our reflection while we are marking the remembrance for the 20th of October 2020 victims. Should Nigerian youths have resorted to just remaining on track and ignoring all forms of distractions, such as the plan to loot, such as the plans to burn tires, such as the plan to block major roads? What could Nigerian youth have done differently? This particular question is something that every single person should sit down and reflect upon. Personally, I believe that the protest should have remained peaceful regardless of all forms of distraction. It should have remained peaceful regardless of all forms of threats, of all forms of attacks by perceived distractors. This protest should have remained on course and should not have had elements of distraction such as the looting, like I said, in major cities like Port Harcourt and Lagos. Because due to that part of the protest, due to those looting, due to those conceived violence or perceived violence, now we are losing the battle at the House of, or rather, we have lost the battle at the House of Representatives because that motion has been shut down completely. Now, at the upcoming march, if it actually holds, I'll beg, I'll pray, and I'll hope that Nigerian youth remain focused on remembering those victims that lost their lives, rather than trying to loot, kill, maim, or even engage themselves in any form of violent acts, regardless of the distraction. To prevent this, we have seen efforts from the federal government and security of operatives warning clearly that Nigerian youth should not, by mistake, intentionally or otherwise, carry out that protest. Although this has fallen on deaf ears, as people are still saying that they would do that, whether it holds or not, like I said, is yet to be confirmed. But remember that the federal government has put in so much effort to prevent this protest from happening. So if you are going to protest on that day, come 20th of October 2021, remember to stay safe. Remember to follow all forms of the rule of law. Remember not to engage in any form of violence, no matter what. Now we have seen a scandal that has placed the seed of doubt in the leadership, or one of the leadership of the NSAS protest, talking about the feminist coalition. Allegations have arisen stating that this group stole money pertaining or reaching up to 150 million naira in Bitcoin that was meant to help the NSAS protest. Whether or not this allegation is true, we are yet to confirm, because the feminist coalition have refused to release any statement on that allegation. But that can also be perceived as a form of distraction, distracting us from the issue. And now Nigerian youths are now having fights among themselves, causing disunity among themselves. Now, if this should go on, if that issue should go on, whether it's going to be proven true or false, this particular protest may not hold. So I would advise that we put off this issue for now and actually focus on what is ahead of us, so that we can carry out that protest or that remembrance peacefully, constitutionally, and legally. So I think we have talked on all the issues concerning the NSAS protest, and I'll leave you right now. But before I do that, remember that you can always post your comments, post your questions, and whatever on our website, News.Band Television, also on our YouTube channel, where this is streamed live. also on our Facebook, and you can always reach any of us on our website. Do remember to follow us, subscribe, and like this video. Thank you so much. And for me, Augusta Nneka, it's good night. Thank you.